Trees keep the air clean and breathable for all living beings on Earth. They help absorb the heat, give us shade, and provide nutrients to the soil. But not all trees are created equally, because there are some seriously odd-looking trees growing up around the world. Today, we'll be taking a look at 15 of the strangest types of trees in the world. Number 15. Strangler Fig. The first tree on our list has a pretty nefarious name and even more nefarious behavior. The strangler fig is one of the biggest moochers on the planet, so much so that it kills the plants around it. There are plenty of different species of strangler fig, but they all do the same thing at the end of the day: strangle their neighboring trees and rob them of their nutrients until they die. It really is as simple as that, and like so many plants in this world, the strangler fig grows upwards as high as it can to absorb the sun's rays while growing deep down into the earth to attack the other tree's roots, and totally goes to town. It's pretty brutal when you think about it, especially considering the fact that the strangler fig usually outlives their hosts by a few years. But on the flip side, you can't deny that the strangler fig can make for an oddly beautiful sight. The way the tree holds tightly onto whatever it can, wrapping its way around massive trees and structures into some kind of twisted art piece that looks fit for a fairy tale. Number 14. Hyperion. What makes Hyperion such a strange tree? Well, it quite literally stands above the crowd as the biggest tree in the world. Hyperion is a coastal redwood in California's Redwoods National Park that stands a whopping 381.1 feet tall. That's about 66 feet taller than London's Big Ben and 73 feet taller than the Statue of Liberty. This redwood was discovered in August 2006 by two naturalists, Chris Atkins and Michael Taylor, who are known for discovering tall trees. Many experts say that Hyperion is probably around 600 years old, but some believe that it can be as old as 800. And like some of the other trees we're going to see today, Hyperion's exact location is kept a secret in order to protect it from danger. Yeah, we can't have people coming in and carving their names into something this amazing, no way. In fact, researchers have suggested that the biggest thing keeping the 35-story Hyperion away from growing any taller is woodpecker damage. And so while the exact location of Hyperion is somewhat of a mystery, many people have put directions on the internet. And while it may be tempting to visit this one-of-a-kind natural masterpiece, too many visitors creating trails can do some serious damage to the surrounding roots. So it may be best to take one for the team and view Hyperion either from a distance or simply from a picture. Number 13. The Devil's Breath. While this next plant may look like it came from a fairy tale, take heed of its eerie name. The Devil's Breath is a large, white, fragrant flower that's also been called Angel's Trumpet. But this plant is incredibly dangerous and scary. And while it may not be carnivorous like some of the other plants on this list, just about every aspect of this plant is poisonous, from the leaves to the seeds. So it's always best to leave this one alone. The Devil's Breath is chock full of toxins that, when ingested, lead to all sorts of unpleasant side effects, each one worse than the last. Well, some of the more mild symptoms include dry mouth, migraine headaches, and diarrhea. But things get really bad when you experience visual and auditory hallucinations, confusion, rapid heartbeat, paralysis, and eventually death. But in some areas and cultures, the Devil's Breath is used to make an incredibly hallucinatory tea that can often lead down a dangerous path. In Colombia, it's even been used by local criminals who turn it into a dust or powder to give to local tourists who become so out of their minds that they'll empty out their bank accounts and hand over the cash without a second thought. And when they eventually wake up the next morning, they won't remember a thing. Number 12. Queensland Bottle Tree. Not all trees need to strangle their neighbors or secrete a powder that turns humans into zombies. Remember that most trees are pretty nice. And with the Queensland Bottle Tree, there's even more to love. This funky, chunky tree looks like it was put here by the good Dr. Seuss, because its defining physical attribute is that swollen base, which gives the Queensland Bottle Tree its bulbous silhouette. Also known as the narrow-leaf bottle tree or the kurrajong. You can find this full-body tree down in Queensland, Australia, and New South Wales, where they grow anywhere between 20 and 40 feet tall and up to 30 feet wide. So if one thing's for sure, it's that tree huggers are going to have a hard time wrapping their arms around this one. But all jokes aside, looking at something like the bottle tree makes you ask yourself, just how did it get to look like this? Well, Australia is known for its arid climate, and so the local flora needs to be able to handle living with a lot less water. And so the conical shape of the Queensland bottle tree allows it to store vast amounts of water within its trunk, meaning they can handle any droughts that are all too common on the continent. But when you work your way up from the base, you'll also see not just a funny juxtaposition of long and skinny branches, but the Queensland bottle tree also sprouts some beautiful yellow and pink flowers that are hard not to enjoy. Number 11. Rainbow Eucalyptus. If you're lucky, you'll get to catch a glimpse of a handful of rainbows in your lifetime. And if that luck persists, you'll be able to get up close and personal with the majestic eucalyptus trees. Now, if there was a way only to combine those two natural wonders, well, good thing Mother Nature gave birth to a little something called the rainbow eucalyptus. Okay, so maybe it's not a little something, it is a big something. The rainbow eucalyptus is one of the most unique, special, and beautiful trees in the world, hands down. Moving away from your typical brown and green colors, earth tones, this vibrant tree opts for fun colors like red, blue, pink, yellow, orange, and green. It's almost got every color in the rainbow on it. The multicolored trees grow anywhere from 200 to 250 feet tall, reaching their way up towards the sun to show off its amazing color palette. As you'd expect, the Crayola-esque bark of the rainbow eucalyptus tree has captured the attention and imaginations of horticulturalists and nature enthusiasts all around the world, so much so that it's become an ornamental plant across many countries and cultures. But if you want to catch this tree in its natural habitat, buy yourself a plane ticket to somewhere like Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, or the Philippines, all generally tropical and humid areas, and growing almost always near a river. Sadly, though, the rainbow eucalyptus is considered a vulnerable species and falls victim to logging and agriculture. What a beautiful tree. Number 10. Socotra Dragonblood Tree. Dragonblood tree? That can't be good. But chances are you've had more brushes with this next tree on our list than you think. The Socotra Dragonblood tree finds its way into plenty of skin products that you can find at grocery and beauty stores. But now we're going to go straight to the source. The dragonblood tree can be found on the Yemeni island of, you guessed it, Socotra, surrounded by the gorgeous Arabian Sea. They can grow to be about 30 feet tall and offer the world a lot more than just their unique look. These strange trees earn their namesake from the blood-red sap that they secrete. But don't be alarmed, because depending on who you ask, these trees are not actually bleeding. But they do come with a unique story, specifically in ancient India. It's said that the resin is the blood of divine beings when a dragon fought against the god Shiva as he rode a war elephant on behalf of the god Brahma. During the fight, Shiva was bitten before slaying it, but the divine blood mixed together, creating this blood tree's resin. And while that may be a myth, it's an awesome one. Unfortunately, the truth is always a little less exciting than the stories. The blood-red resin is a natural defense mechanism against damage, disease, and insect invasions. And despite looking like they're from a fantasy novel, the Socotra dragonblood tree is considered a vulnerable species. Number 9. Kapok Tree. Not all trees are created equal, and not all trees are as good as you'd think. Case in point with the Kapok Tree. This tree grows too fast for its own good, to the point where it becomes invasive and dangerous to the flora around it. As it stands, a kapok tree will grow an average of 6 feet a year, growing up to block the sun from other trees out to prevent its neighbors' branches from growing, and grows down, suffocating the nearby roots. These bad neighbors will grow to be at least 80 feet and expand about 8 feet in every direction above the ground, while their roots spread out for another 15 feet. The kapok tree truly has no regard for the personal space of others and has people incredibly interested in this special tree. But they do a lot more than invade the neighborhood. They also contain a number of chemical compounds that can cause serious adverse reactions in the animals that get a little too close. The seeds of the kapok tree contain a lot of malvallic and sterculic acid, which cause irritation in the eyes, throat, and nose, and can lead to things like bronchitis. But despite the dangers, the fruits that bear these seeds are incredibly beautiful and enveloped in thick cotton covering, which is harvested and used for insulation and bedding. Just make sure not to eat it. Number 8. Baobab Tree. One of the most important trees on the planet is none other than the baobab tree. What makes it so special? Well, how much time do you have? Because the tree has well over 300 real-world applications across dozens of industries. But let's take a few steps back and just gaze at the Baobab tree in all of its glory. For starters, they're absolutely huge, growing to an average height of about 70 feet, but they're as smooth as they are branchless, so good luck climbing this thing. But as you move your gaze upwards, you'll see that the incredible width and girth of the Baobab tree tapers off at the bottom, making for one of the strangest looking trees around. They're quite bulbous at the bottom, and when you get to the top, they all of a sudden become skinny, and the branches only grow at the crown. It's the tree equivalent of having a bad haircut, but this is another classic case of storing a ton of water within that girth, because the baobab lives in arid climates, so it holds about 30,000 gallons of water at a time. But as awesome as they are, the population is declining rapidly because of excessive harvesting from humans, grazing, and just lack of conservation efforts. It's too bad, because this is a beautiful tree. Number 7. Jaboticaba Tree. A great tree will bear some great fruit if you can reach up and pick the ripened delights off the branches and go to town. But what about those fruits that don't grow from the branches? Is that even possible? Well, go ahead and ask the Jaboticaba tree. From far away, this tree looks like it's got some sort of strange disease, as it's covered in colored bulbs. But upon further inspection, you'll find that these bulbs are the fruit. This tree's fruits come straight from the source, popping up all around the trunk instead. It's actually pretty cool, even if it does run some chills down your spine initially. This funky yet fruity tree is indigenous to the hills of Brazil, Bolivia, Paraguay, and northeastern Argentina. The Jaboticaba tree is also incredibly diverse, growing anywhere between 10 to 45 feet tall, and the fruits of their labor can be sparse or take up the entire tree if you're lucky. But part of what makes these trees so interesting and so strange is that they're incredibly slow growers, so the chances are that if you see one of these in the South American wild, it hasn't even come close to reaching its full potential. But just remember that slow and steady wins the race, and luckily for all of us, the Jaboticaba tree is doing very well and falls under the label of least concern, meaning they're not going anywhere anytime soon. Number 6. The Crooked Forest. Not so much a tree as it is a collection of trees, the Crooked Forest in Poland is home to some of the strangest and ominous-looking trees anywhere. They're all bare and bend at the same point and all at the same angle, and to add to the weirdness is the fact that no one really has a great answer as to why this phenomenon happens. But you better believe that people have their wild theories. The local lore will tell you that the trees were planted around the year 1930, not even 10 years before World War II would engulf the region, so there's the theory that war and explosions caused the strange curves. But then there are the people who believe that the trees achieve their look via man-made methods and techniques with the hopes of freaking people out in the future, which is a total possibility. But then you have the fringe people who believe that these trees got their shape from aliens, witches, energy fields, and the like. Chances are we'll never know the true reason for these crooked trees' existence, but one thing's for sure. Getting here at the crack of dawn when the entire crooked forest is covered in a thick blanket of fog is one beautiful yet chilling thing you'll ever have the privilege of seeing. Number 5. Tree of Tule. Next on our list is one of the more famous strange trees in the world. If you head down to the state of Oaxaca in Mexico, make sure you pay the renowned Tree of Tule a visit. The Tree of Tule is quite literally one of the biggest attractions on the grounds of the Santa Maria del Tule town center, where it's lived for the last 2,000 years. That's one old tree, and it's also given the Tree of Tule plenty of time to grow, because the first thing anyone with eyes will notice is its sheer scale. That trunk is about 140 feet in diameter, and the crown of the tree is so broad that it's nearly impossible to get an accurate measurement of its height. But researchers believe it to be about 140 feet high. Originally, the tree was so large that people believed it to be multiple trees twisted and contorted into one large structure, and local indigenous legends say that the Tree of Tule was planted by an ancient Aztec prophet in honor of the wind god he served. Number 4. The Sabina. The next tree on our list is really bent out of shape, but it's also one of the coolest and strangest trees in the world. While you'd expect a tree to grow upright, reaching straight up into the sky, the Sabina tree in Spain has chosen a different path, bending over and seemingly growing sideways. So how does a tree get this funky? Well, the answer is actually quite simple. It grows along with the direction of the wind. But doesn't the wind change direction? Well, so does the Sabina. So it's a tree that you can visit multiple times a year, and chances are it won't look quite the same as it did before. It really is an amazing one-of-a-kind tree that makes you think about just how strong those winds must be that they can do this to something as strong as a tree. Number 3. Tree of Life. The Tree of Life in Bahrain is one of the most interesting trees in the world, not so much because of how it looks, but because of where it lives. The Tree of Life sits alone in a barren area in the Arabian Desert at Bahrain's highest point and is about 32 feet tall. The tree has no shortage of gorgeous green leaves and long-reaching branches, and the resin it oozes is used for all sorts of things like making candles, aromatics, and gum. And the beans of the tree are processed into things like meal, jam, and wine. The tree serves a great many purposes and sees about 65,000 tourists a year to boot. But the one thing that the tree doesn't see is water. The tree is about 400 years old, and in that time has never seen any rain and is the only living thing in the surrounding area. How the Tree of Life is able to not just exist but thrive is somewhat of a mystery, but the most likely story is that its roots, which reach down for nearly 200 feet, run deep enough to gather much of the moisture found under the sand. Some also believe that the tree survives on divinity and is the fabled Tree of Life from the Garden of Eden, and therefore doesn't need any water to survive. It's certainly fun to think about, but chances are the answer is far more scientific. Number 2. Silk Cotton Trees. The silk cotton tree looks like they belong in the Jungle Book, but these trees lived around the Siem Reap province of Cambodia. They grow all over the fantastical scenery and have remained relatively untouched and undisturbed for hundreds of years, and they wind and weave their way around many of the area's ancient stone structures of Angkor Archaeological Park. But aside from their looks, what sets the silk cotton trees apart is their trunks grow upwards while the roots stay on land, giving them an almost Tolkien-like look. There is truly nothing else in the world like a silk cotton tree. But living up to their namesake, they also produce several hundred seed pods at a time, which can grow to be about 6 inches in length, all of which are surrounded by light, fluffy, white-yellow fibers that look an awful lot like cotton. But chances are you won't even take notice of these pods, because the roots of the silk cotton trees are just so damn captivating. Number 1. The Sandbox Tree. You'd think that with a name like the sandbox tree, this type of tree would be harmless. Well, think again. This type of evergreen tree is a native resident of the tropical regions of both North and South America, and is especially prevalent in the humid Amazon rainforest. But the sandbox tree is pretty hard to miss because of the hundreds of dark pointed spines jutting out of the smooth, deep brown bark. There are so many spines and they're so ominous looking that the sandbox tree has earned the nickname Monkey No Climb. And if it's too scary for a monkey, then it's definitely too scary for even the bravest of tree-climbing humans. And as if that wasn't enough, the sandbox tree's sap is incredibly caustic, harming anything that it comes into contact with. It's been said that the tree's sap is similar to your common household drain cleaner, and has even been used by fishermen to poison fish. Only that's one fillet of sole you may not want to dig into afterwards. Even the local tribes people reportedly use the sandbox tree sap on the tips of their arrows to make for a deadly combination. And even the fruit of the sandbox tree can kill you if you're not careful. The tree's seed pods are about the size of a large fist, and when they ripen can actually explode. The dried fruit is sent flying everywhere and moves with so much force that it can wound any livestock or humans nearby. That's one hell of a dangerous tree.
Watch our nature playlist for more top 15 videos about beautiful nature. Sit back, relax, and binge watch all of our best nature videos.